Hey folks, welcome back to our Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark.
And I'm Randy.
Today we're taking a look at Emperor's Choice.
Emperor's Choice is brought to you by Tasty Minstrel Games. It supports 3 to 5 players, ages 12 and up, and each game takes between 90 minutes and 2 hours to play.
Great. Well, this overview we're going to give you on this game, folks, is the old version. The Tasty Minstrel version is going to be a deluxe version of the game, and I can't wait to check it out. In Emperor's Choice, the player with the most victory points at the end of 6 rounds is going to win. However, to achieve these victory points, you will have to present your achievements according to the Emperor's policies. However, the Emperor's policies are subject to change and influence. All right, let's take a quick look at setup. There's a few different things you'll do based on player count, but these are the basics we'll go over. You have the main board, you have the palace board, and you have your victory point scoring board. And then you have the policy cards. There are 7 of these. They are double-sided. You'll just lay them out. And then you have your character or your recruitment cards that you'll lay these out as well. And you have your Qin Dynasty tiles. You'll create, again, the tile placement here or tile rows that you create are based on the player count. And then you have your tribute cards. You have gold, of course, that you'll be tapping into. The cubes all represent the soldiers that you'll be using in the game. And then you have your treasure cards.
After you've set up the main elements of the game on the table, it's time for individual player setup. Each player is given 2 of these cavalry cards. Now, these are the cards you'll be recruiting throughout the game. However, the starting cards, and this is true for many of the tiles as well, have this S in the lower right of them. You'll see in the upper corners of the character cards a red diamond, and the number there represents their bidding strength. The higher the number, the more strength they are in bidding. You'll see beneath that a coin or coins, and this represents the cost to recruit these characters. Beneath that, there potentially could be some other symbols, and we'll talk about those in a minute. Each player is also given a random carriage tile, again with the S for starting, and then they're allowed to choose from the pile of remaining non-starting carriage tiles. They're able to get 1 more of these tiles. So they'll start with 2 of these carriage tiles. They also start with 2 of these, what they call castle tiles. Again, they have the S there. These are used for generating gold as you go forward. Players are also given 4 of these soldier cubes. You have a fixed number of cubes in the game.
Right, based on the player count.
Based on the player count. Yep. So unlike a lot of tokens where you say, well, if you run out, you can always get pennies or something like that to replace them. In this case, the cubes are fixed intentionally. So as you're accumulating soldiers, you may be preventing other people from getting soldiers in future turns and vice versa as well. So keep that in mind as you accumulate those. And lastly, each player is given 6 of these discs in their player color. 3 of these you will immediately place on the boards. You'll place 1 on the 10 victory point spot here. You'll place 1 here at the base of the palace board, showing that you have not accumulated any improvements yet. And you'll put 1 here on the 5 spot on the Emperor's Favor track. The remaining 3 you'll keep not only to show your player color, but also when you get more victory points than 100, you'll put 1 of these discs in the plus 100 spot to indicate that the track is now this value plus 100 or 200 or 300, depending upon how many discs you have there. The last thing you will do during player setup is to allow each player to choose a bonus tile. Now, when you start the game, the youngest player will get to go first during the first round. But the way you compensate for the last player having to go last is he will get first chance of choosing bonus tiles. The way it will work is he will randomize these 6 tiles and choose a number equal to the number of players. So in this case, we have 3 players in the setup here.
And they're all pretty nice.
They're all pretty
good.
They
give you a leg up in some fashion.
Right, but the fact that the last player gets to choose first allows him potentially to choose what he might consider the best card. And we'll look at some of these right now. We won't go into detail all of them. But you'll see the tiles here. This one has, and again, they have this S for the starting portion. He might choose an extra card. This will allow him to choose an extra card, and it's a 3 strength card. Cavalry card, which is a pretty decent card. Give him some benefit when he starts bidding. He can choose an extra gold to begin with. Now you start with no gold whatsoever. Right. Gold is very useful not only to bid on, or I'm sorry, to recruit characters, but also to move your palace up levels. And as you move your palace up, you will get various rewards there. And you'll see on here,
Absolutely.
you'll see 2 rewards for each level, and you get to choose one of those 2. So gold is
Very valuable.
very important in the game. And another one is he might choose just from the very outset to get a tribute card. Now, we haven't shown you the tribute cards yet, but what they are is these are cards that have victory points that will be tabulated at the end of the game. They, at least in the original printing, they vary from 2 to 4.
Right.
But these are cards you'll keep secret. And
that's important to note, right? That
It really
all the
is.
cards, the recruitment cards, everything in your hand is kept secret. However, the tiles that you're
Right.
playing are all out in front of you, perfect
Right.
knowledge for everyone to see.
as are soldiers and as are your gold. So those are things that, as you said, you will look around, see what your opponents have, and that will come into play when you're making your bids, when you're choosing which policies to invoke, and so forth.
All right, so gameplay consists of 6 rounds, and every round has 4 phases. The first phase we're going to look at is the auction phase, and this is all about having the most power so you can be the first one to pick tiles. And tiles are crucial throughout the game for activating those policy cards and getting benefits from them.
Right. And there's a
Right.
variety of tiles, and what you'll see in this game is there's various vectors you can pursue to get points and to get gold and things like
Right.
that. So because of the variation of tiles, you'll see different people pursue different strategies going forward.
Totally.
But it's always going to be beneficial if you get first choice of the various sets of
Absolutely.
tiles.
And we ran into that in our play. Definitely first choice, or at least second choice, is really critical at times in the game. Oh, man. So, but really what you're doing here is the first person to bid can bid whatever they want. You can throw out your entire hand. But you're going to, for example, throw down a card that's a 3 and then throw in 2 soldiers, cubes, that make it a 5 power. So the next person in turn then would have to 1-up you and make it a 6. And you continue this pattern round and round until folks start passing.
Right. Now, there's one limitation is you cannot just dump your entire hand after, let's say, Mark plays one card, a 3, and 2 soldiers, that gives him 5. And it's like, wow, okay, I've got 3 2s. I'm just going to dump 3 2s on the table, and I'm ahead of him. I can't do that because I'm only allowed to play as many cards as the previous player played plus 1. So that does limit you, and it does give you the necessity of having soldiers nearby to help augment your cards.
Right.
If a player chooses not to bid 1 more than the previous player, or they cannot, they must pass. And when they pass, they must perform a number of steps. The first thing they do is they will choose the highest valued turn order marker remaining on the board. The next thing I would do is I would lay out my cards from highest to lowest in value. The reason this is important is you will have to lose the card in the sequence equal to this value. So if I were the third person, or if I were the first person to pass and I got the number 3 turn order marker, I would count down my list and I'd say I'd skip the soldiers, I'd skip the first 3, and the second 3 I'd have to discard. Now typically, if you're a person to pass early, you will end up with a higher turn order and you will probably have fewer cards to discard or from which to discard. And so let's say I'd only bid using 2 cards. Let's say I'd used 4 soldiers and 1 3 and then I passed. When I choose this marker, I must choose the third thing in that sequence, and it goes from 4 soldiers, 3 card, and then nothing. So if there's nothing in that sequence, there's no penalty for you.
There are benefits to being last.
There are benefits to having the being last in the turn order in the coming phases. After they pass, they will then choose one of these withdraw tokens. Now, this is your bonus for going out. And
it's
again,
kind of an instant action.
it is an instant action, and again, it kind of mitigates the pain of having to go out. And you'll get to choose first, and you'll choose, in this one, you get to move your palace marker up 1. So the number of these that are out is, as Mark has said before, based on player count. So the more players are, the more of these choices you will have. But this one, let's say I choose this one, I would get to move my marker up by 1. And when I did that, I would get to choose one of these 2 rewards for that particular palace. And then after the player has completed all the steps associated with passing, bidding will continue with the next player around the table until all players have passed.
Then we move to the management phase, and the player with the order tile of 1 will be the first player to activate. The first thing they're do is they're going after the Qin Dynasty tiles. They're looking at the tile display, they get to pick one of these rows. Now these tiles also have instant actions on them. Wherever you see that red X, you'll do that action immediately. There might be things like activating one of the policies. You might get gold right away. So you got to keep those in mind. And once you grab those tiles, those instant action tiles then get discarded. However, the rest of the tiles all go out in front of you. And then you're going to take a look at all the castles you have. You're going to count them up, and that's the amount of gold you're going to receive. And if you have any treasure cards, then you will activate those. Based on the round you're in, will determine what you're going to get. You might get more soldiers, you get victory points, or you might get favor from the emperor. So the way those cards work, though, again, we look back at the tiles. If you had any tiles that had an instant action on them where you could acquire one of these treasures, then you grab one from either the main pool or you can steal them from other players.
The last thing a player will do during his turn in the management phase is to resupply. During this phase, he's able to spend gold to do one of three things. He can either A, buy soldiers for 1 soldier per gold he spends.
Right.
He can also recruit these character cards based upon their cost. Now, in addition to being the first player to choose your row of tiles, this is the other reason you might want to bid until you're the first player.
Absolutely.
So you get first picks of these cards. And it's important to know that when you purchase or recruit a card from here, this spot is not refilled immediately.
No,
so the
until
remaining
the end of the
players in
round.
this round get fewer cards to choose from. The third thing you can do with your gold during the resupply step is to move up your palace marker, to upgrade your palace. You can spend 1 gold to move up 1 level. You can spend 3 gold to move up 2 levels, and you can spend 6 gold to move up 3 levels. And each level you move up, you get to choose one of the 2 rewards. So if you did spend 6 gold, move up 3 levels, you would get to choose from each of those 3 rewards for each of those 3 levels.
Right.
After that player has completed his steps during the management phase, it continues with the next player in turn order, and then they get to do their steps as well.
Phase 3 is the Imperial Decree phase. And here, you're going to be looking at who has the most favor of the emperor, currently in the favor track. And again, you're getting favor by potentially moving up over on the palace track, or there are cards, your character cards might have given you additional favor as well, because each of the characters do have special actions they can perform, right?
And even your treasures can give you favor as well, and there are some of these tiles that give you immediate favor as well.
So there's lots of ways to get favor.
And the great thing about this is if you didn't do well in the bidding, and you say, I didn't get the first turn order marker, I'm down here at 3, that's okay, because this phase involves who has the most favor, not who did the best in bidding.
Exactly. But you're going to be using that favor. So there's a couple different imperial action favor tiles that you can activate here. And you can pick whichever one. If you are the leader here, you get to pick one of them. And there are 3 actions to perform on each of these tiles. So for this one, for instance, you can activate a policy and flip a policy and then gain 3 points of victory. And these things can be done in any order. It doesn't matter. And once you do this, you'll flip the tile over. The other possible tile is going to allow you to get a tribute card as well as activate a policy and get 3 victory points. So like Randy said, there are reasons that you want to move up on this track, especially if you have not been playing first in general like I did in the game. So I utilize this track quite a bit and it works really well.
Now the key thing here is this, you might think, well, this goes to the top 2 players who are in favor, but after you basically exchange your favor to perform one of these actions and invoke one of these policies, you will lose a certain amount of favor based
on the round.
And if you are still in the lead on the favor track, you'll get to do the same thing again. If you're not, then the other player who is the lead in the favor track will get to do so. So let's talk more about these policy cards. Each of these 7 policy cards have 2 sides, and the effects on each side tend to be fairly complementary. So there are reasons you might want to flip them before you evoke them,
for sure.
or to flip them in order to prevent somebody else from activating them that benefits.
And that's amazing.
It is. And he does quite well at doing that. In any case, these are the primary ways that you will be generating victory points throughout the game. And it's really kind of the heart of the game in many ways.
A lot of ways. That and the bidding are really kind of the main things in this game.
And so this game has a lot of interesting mechanics, and this is one of them that initially seem kind of confusing, but you'll click on it really quickly once you understand what these cards do. When you do activate the effect on either side of the card, you will put one of these discs on there, and it will remain on there, preventing this disc or this card from being activated again until all the discs have been placed. Once that happens, there will still be one card that's unactivated. You'll put a tribute card beneath that to provide incentive for activating that in the future. Remove all 6 discs, and that will free up all the cards to be activated again. This is a really simple one, but the way you could potentially get lots of points is basically everybody shows 2 cards from their hand, 2 of their character cards, and they would in general choose 2 of the highest ones. And for each point in that, so if I had a 9 and a 4, I showed them, that would give me a total of 13 points, and therefore I'd get 13 victory points from showing that. Now the downside of this is that now my opponents know 2 of my cards, and so I might not show that 9. I might show a 4 and a 5 just so they don't know I have that high card in hand. You'll see these tiles. There's a green one that has a face on it. He's a legalist, and the blue one with a face on it is Confucius. So this particular one says if you have one of those legalist tiles in front of you, you get 2 victory points. If you have 2, then you have 5 victory points. If you have 3, you get 9. And then based upon the number you've got, you get that many favor points. And then everybody, and that goes for everybody. When you score all these, except for one particular one, these score for everybody around the table. And that's important. And then that person loses a legalist tile. Now, the other side of that card has the same benefits for people who have Confucius tiles. So basically, this is a reward for set building. And that's true for one of the other ones as well. Anyway, these policy cards are the way you'll generate a lot of points in the game. And choosing the order for your benefit and for your neighbor's detriment is really key in the game.
And then the 4th phase is the setup phase. And this is basically a cleanup phase. You're going to take and repopulate the row of character cards, your recruitment row. Basically anything that's left here gets put into the discard, and you put out a whole new set of characters based on the player count again, +1. And then you'll reset the tiles on the main board. The withdraw tiles will all flip back over, and you'll flip over the Imperial Decree tiles. And then we're going to set up the Qin Dynasty tiles. We're going to reset up those rows based again on the player count. You're going to draw the tiles from the bag and place them in their rows. Now, as you're drawing these tiles, one thing we didn't talk about is that you might get barbarian tiles that increase the barbarian strength level. And why is that important? Well, some of the tiles are walls and buildings that you're going to build to protect you from these barbarians, as well as using your soldier cubes. So if the policy card gets activated where the barbarians attack, you better be ready with either walls or soldiers to protect you. And the strength of the barbarians can really ramp up quick based on what tiles are going to come out of that Qin Dynasty bag. And so you'll do this for every round except the final round where you'll calculate your final score.
There are 7 different ways you can score victory points at the end of the game. So it might not be really obvious who's actually going to win. You might be betting on a certain person, but you might be wrong.
It could swing really quick.
It certainly can. So let's look at the various ways. The first thing you'll do is you'll remove all of the discs from the policy cards, and you will run through those and score them again for everybody. This is a reason that flipping cards might be good, even if you can't activate a particular policy card. Preparing for the end of game scoring can be really key.
Absolutely.
The next thing you'll do is you'll look at the favor, and each player will score victory points based upon their total favor divided by 2, rounded down. They'll also score favor based upon their level of their palace increments. You see on the, not on the right side, but on the left side, those levels have victory points associated with them. Gold is also worth victory points, 1 victory point per gold. You'll have some character cards that have end of game scoring. You'll have the victory points associated with each of the 3 treasure cards. Basically, those are worth 3 points each. And the last thing you'll do, and this is where the real swing comes, is the tribute cards will be added up, and those total victory points will be added to your total score.
Again, those have been secret through the whole game.
Exactly. So you might, be losing hope until you turn over your tribute cards and find that you've won the game after all.
And the player with the most victory points
wins the game.
All right, folks, just a reminder once again, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview, and everything you've seen here has been in the previous version of the game, and Tasty Minstrels is doing a deluxe version, so keep a close eye on the campaign for any changes that still may occur. Now, that said, the thing about this game is that there are so many choices, so many directions to go, and, we didn't go into all the details about all the policy cards, or even all the character cards, how the different abilities and different things at the bottom can activate and really change up how you play. So there's a lot of things going on, and it really makes the decision process interesting.
That's absolutely true. And like I said earlier, just because you didn't do well in bidding doesn't mean that you don't have a hope in getting some strength and power later in the game. So I like the fact that there are all these different vectors, all these different axes on which you can concentrate your efforts and choose different strategies.
Indeed. But ultimately, folks, if this looks like a game that would be of interest to you, I'm sure they'd appreciate your support.
Absolutely.
So I think that's it from us.
Yep.
Until next time, we'll
see you at the table.
So much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching the Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.